We are taking a look at Tract 6 at Elm Hollow on Bull Shoals Lake. This is a 5-acre property. This is one of the the very special tracts. These are all great tracts out here. There are only 16 different tracts. It's a small rural development at Bull Shoals Lake, and some of the tracts have actual frontage on the Corp of Engineers take line along their east side, and this is one of those properties. So if we look at Tract 6 here, and we've got it shaded with like a bluish green, it looks like, just so it kind of jumps out at you when you're looking at it, because this map has a lot of stuff going on. The entire east side of the property directly borders the core land at Bull Shoals Lake. So if you're familiar with the Corp of Engineers Lake, bordering the core land or the take line is what gives you access basically to the water and to the core land itself, which is also a good way to explore different parts of the shoreline. The core land is also open generally for public hunting. So similar to if you have a property that borders national forest, then you're allowed to go directly into that to access that from your property for hunting and recreation and whatnot. So pretty unique to have that combined with some of the other aspects. It's extremely hard to find a property with core frontage in the first place. Number two is that if you find one, often they may not have county road access. It may be a deeded easement or a non-deeded easement. In this case, we have direct county road frontage on Tract 6. And another gigantic bonus is there's actually a power line crossing directly over Tract 6 already. So you do have access to power right there if and when you need it. So we've never seen all those three things in one property other than here at Elm Hollow. Certainly it exists, but most of the places where kind of the stars have aligned and all those things come together have already been developed and built upon, and we just kind of got lucky when we found this project here. So we are excited about it. And again, a few of the tracks do have the actual core frontage, and this is one of them. So if we look at the map, why don't we zoom in just a bit? We might turn that shading off in a moment as well, just because it's hard to see the actual property. But basically it's rectangular in shape. It's going to be about 180 feet north to south and about 1,300 or 1,320 feet east to west. You can see the county road, which goes southerly down toward a little peninsula on the lake. The land actually is on both sides of the county road, so you've got extra options with that. The map shows a creek bed that crosses over the property. It's a wet weather creek or a seasonal creek. Whoops, dropped my little stylus here. There we go. Wet weather or seasonal creek, but it's actually a large gravel creek bed. So at some point within the maybe not too distant future, that likely was a year-round creek, because the old log cabin and kind of original homestead for this area is just not even a quarter mile to the north of this property. And they likely chose that spot for a few different reasons, but one of them being that creek bed. So probably within the last 100, 200 years, it was a year-round creek, and then something shifted underground, and now you're likely to only see water in it certain times of the year or after it rains. The couple times we've been out there, I think a portion of it was flowing one of the times, and the other times we basically just saw either pools of water or spots that were kind of damp that made it pretty clear that there had been water flowing through there recently. But that's on crossing over about the middle of the property. As far as the topography, the property is going to be the highest at the county road, and then slopes down as you go easterly and westerly. So if you're going, let's say westerly, it's going to slope down as you head toward the creek bed. And then once you get to the creek bed, cross over that, it's going to rise back up. But actually, it's interesting. It rises very, very gradually and appears to level out toward the west side, which gives you the potential for a super nice building site over on that west side. If we look at the east side, again, from the county road, it slopes down. So most of the properties, well, most of the properties in the Ozarks are going to slope down as you move away from the road, because the roads were generally built on ridges because they were the easiest to maintain. I think that's nationwide. That's a common thing to do. So with the road being on a ridge, kind of by definition, it slopes down as you move away from that, and that is the case here. If we go to the east, and why don't we start with, we're going to turn the shading off because that is just getting a little bit annoying because we can't see the property. Okay, whoop, there we go, okay. So MapRight has several different aerial base maps. This one looks like maybe a springtime base map. You can see a lot of different greens in the trees. The darker green are likely going to be either cedar or pine trees. In this case, probably cedar trees. That's mostly what we've seen out there rather than pine trees. So this property looks like it's got quite a few cedars on the east and then more of a hardwood mix on the west. And we can try Google Map. Google Map is usually pretty good. It's generally fairly clear, and that's the case here. But this is a summertime aerial, so just everything is green, and that's not giving us much information. Oop. We can try this one. That's a little different. Now this one, just by virtue of, I guess, when the photo was taken, which apparently was the fall, you can almost get a feel for the topography just looking at this two-dimensional aerial. So we have the county road, and if you look westerly, look to the left, start looking at the shadows, you can see how it kind of drops as you get to that creek bed, and then rises back up, and then up here starts to level off. East side, it's a little tougher to tell, but we know it does slope down. Why don't we just go to a topo map, and I think that'll give us the most info. So we're going to start with, this is called the modern topo. So the gray line will be the county road, and even though it's kind of hard to tell on the map, it is right in the center of a ridge when you're on track 6 here. So as we go westerly, it's sloping down. You've got the creek bed, and then after you cross over, it starts to rise back up. But like we mentioned earlier, topo map shows it being very gradual, and that this west side is if not level, then has some level areas, or is generally fairly level on, I might have said east side, on this west side. The east side, the far east side, does not appear to be level. So as we go back to the county road and go east, it's going to start sloping down. This first couple hundred feet is going to be similar to the first couple hundred feet on the west side. So according to the topo map. Topo maps are generally pretty accurate, but we've run into a couple where they just weren't. In this case, the topo combined with the drone video, I think this has given us a fairly good representation of the property. So sloping down, and then once you get back about, I don't know, 300 feet or so, see how these lines are closer, so that's indicating a steeper grade. So the lines are not stacked right on top of one another, so it's not a bluff, it's not a drop that we can tell looking at this. But because they get closer, we know it does get steeper. And that's super common as you go down a valley, especially if there happens to be, you know, water at the base of the valley, which there often would be in this case. So now we will try what's called the vintage topo. And these were created, it's our understanding that these were created in the 1950s. And so the vintage topo is a little messier, but it gives us some information that the modern topo simply doesn't. And the vintage topo shows us that when these maps were done in the 50s, the greenish areas had tree cover, so they were wooded, and the whitish areas were basically open, so meadow, pasture, they were open areas. And so as we look at specifically tract 6, we can see that by the road itself, it was wooded. Going east was wooded. Going west was wooded as you go down the hill. But then once you get closer to the creek bed, it was basically open meadow or pasture. Crossing over the creek bed and then heading up the west side, that was basically open pasture or open meadow as well, according to this topo map. And that makes sense because generally the homesteaders way back in the day, it was the more level land that they were clearing and maintaining as pasture or meadow. And that appears to be the case here. So that's pretty cool to see. By the way, if you look to the north, toward the north side of tract 5, the topo map shows a little square or a little dot. That is about the location of the original log cabin homestead for these Elm Hollow tracts. So the open pasture on tract 6, because tract 6 doesn't have the old kind of remains of the log cabin. That's tract 5, but tract 6 would have definitely been part of kind of their main yard area. In fact, all the white area that connects to the location of the cabin probably was part of the main yard that they used and maintained. So we won't spend too much time at all looking at the area because you can get a good look at that if you look at the Elm Hollow main page on the website. But the interactive map is great. It's really fun to play around with. You'll find a similar map within the listing page for this property. It might not be specific for tract 6 like this one is. It might show all the tracts, but really all you have to do is zoom in to tract 6 or whatever tract you happen to be looking at. You'll be able to do most of the stuff we're doing as far as changing the base maps, going to a topo map. You can zoom way out and check out Theodosia, which is just a couple miles to the west. Gainesville is, I believe, 10 or 15 miles to the east, Gainesville, Missouri. And that's actually the county seat for Ozark County, and that's where these properties are. Yeah, fantastic. Whether you're looking for a place to build a home, or maybe a vacation cabin at the lake, or just a place to go and hunt or camp a few times a year, the investment potential, I mean, the usability of these tracks, phenomenal. So quite a few public launches nearby to launch your boat or your jet skis. Potentially you could do it at the little peninsula down on the south where the county road basically ends, and then there's a little trail we found that goes down to that tiny peninsula which has a beach area, but it's not a designated launch. It'd be more of a primitive launch, so you do that at your own risk. We've done it many a time, not at that particular one just because we haven't had the opportunity, but we've used a ton of primitive launches on Bull Shoals Lake, and it's been fine. But again, there are public launches in the area as well. Can't speak this evening. So there we have it, track 6 at Elm Hollow. Gorgeous property. Someone is going to have a really nice really nice package with this property. So we're excited about it. If you have any questions, give us a shout, send us an email. We would love to talk to you.